Hi, I'm Dr. Bertice Berry, and I have to tell you this story. It's a big story. Several years back, I felt what some people would call a calling on my life to do something more than what I was doing, and I didn't know what that was. And I didn't, to be honest with you, I didn't want to hear about it. I was like, I'm doing enough. I'm tired. I'm not worthy. I'm mad. I'm hungry. You think of anything. Look, there's a monkey. That was me. And then my rector, Michael, came out to meet me. He said, I'd like to talk to you. And he said the same thing. I feel that there's a calling on your life. So I entered into a period of discernment, which is a period by which you listen for direction, listen for how to go, how to move, what to be. This was right, like the pandemic was happening. So, doing something new was not something you would think about in the middle of a pandemic. Still, I went forth in all of that. I met with my bishop. I met with, Michael, our rector at our church. I met with some folks, and then they said, yeah, we think you should go forth in this process. And so then after that, you meet with a committee of people over several months. You sit and you discern with them, and questions are asked and posed, and you look into what those questions would be. And then in this community of people discerning with you, you move from that into whether or not you should enter school. And before you can enter school, there's background checks, there's psychiatric evaluations. People want to see your transcripts, everything you can imagine. You have to do all of that before you can enter the school to begin the study. And then when I entered into the school of deacons, because the call of the deacon felt right for me, where the service is more out in the world, bringing it back, the needs to the church. And then serving in the church, but actually serving out. Now, the role of the deacon in the Episcopal Church is very different than deacon in a Baptist church or other churches, where the deacon is kind of in charge of the building and the making sure things are right and the funds and the this and the that. And then sometimes you get a deaconess. We are not deaconesses anymore in the Episcopal Church. We're all deacons, and we're all, if you get to ordination, you are a reverend. You are considered reverend. And it is holy orders. You're seeking holy orders. But you don't get to that point until after you finish all of the education, all the competencies. You have to answer these competencies. Now, I answered competencies in my doctoral program. But in my doctoral program, I had already had a master's degree. So when you have a master's degree, you already know the language of your field of study. When you go into religious studies, for me particularly, I come from sociology. I didn't come from an Episcopal background, so all the language was new. I was not only learning the new language, but the meaning and the application and the way it is. And our church is really unique. You should look up the Episcopal Church. We don't just say everybody's welcome and included. It's in our bylaws. It's in our canons that everybody is welcome and included. You try to not include some people and you will see what happens. So it's a part of the belief system, the culture. It is a part of everything. And so you learn all of that, and then you go back to, like the beginning of time, and you study the history, you study the early theologians, you study the language of theologians, you study Holy Scripture, you study what it means to be diaconia, you study, there's so much, and it is life affirming for me to study that way. Anyway, when you finish the study, then you go into an internship where you actually are at a church that is not your own, and you're serving in that church to learn the actual machinations, the movements, the flow of all of it. And then when you finish that, you still have to go before another committee to determine whether or not you can go on and receive holy orders, which this takes years. It takes years of study, application, more discernment, committees of people who are working with you and praying with you and giving grace and giving instruction and reflection and holding up a mirror and helping you. It's years of doing that. Well, this past weekend, I did those last meetings, and I was approved for ordination. And so what am I going into? In this particular order, we are called to serve people, particularly the poor, the weak, the sick, and the lonely. All priests and deacons and bishops are called to serve the poor and the weak, the sick. Deacons specifically are called to the lonely. And as a deacon, we are called also to interpret the needs of the world and bring them back to the church. That is unique to us, and it is very unique to me as a sociologist. So you can imagine how much I love this order. It is a sacred order, it is an ancient order, goes way back to Stephen and 6 others being called to take care of the Hellenistic Jews, the Greek-speaking Jews who were outside of the what so-called regular Jews. This is in the book of Acts, where we're now moving into the world. Christianity is moving throughout all the world, and those who were marginalized were not being cared for. And so the order of deacons was created to care for the marginalized. You already know. So how does that change this story group? It does not. How does it change the story page? It does not. This continues because it's a part of my ministry. It's a part of my care. It's a part of my understanding. How does my work as a sociologist change? It just gets better. Like Pauli Murray, who had done all of that amazing work for civil rights and for women's rights. And she was on the beginning and the cutting edge of absolutely everything. She became the first Black woman ordained in the Episcopal Church because she realized that she couldn't end racism, sexism, homophobia on her own. She needed God. She needed a community of believers who understood that all are welcome and all belong. She needed more than just herself and just her studies and her absolute brilliance. She needed more. And while I am nowhere near a Pauli Murray, I know I needed more. The idea of belonging and all this wonderful stuff comes from this deep, deep study. So after years and years and years of going deep and understanding and serving and seeking to serve, I will be receiving holy orders on April 13th. And if you happen to be in Savannah, Georgia, come on by. I love you.